Hey, what's happening, family? It's your man Mark Black. You know what time it is. Happy Hump Day to all of you. Welcome to the midweek broadcast. Right. Before we get started, I just want to give everybody a quick shout out. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're gonna be talking about a bit of a heavy duty topic, right? I don't think it necessarily requires that you do so much thinking cap stuff, but a little bit of introspection and a lot of analysis is definitely going to be called for today. So keep that in mind. Um, as per usual, fam, resources, links, all sorts of stuff is in the description field below the video. Also, any references to any materials that I'm going to make during this broadcast, you'll also find a link to them in the comments underneath the video here too as well, so you can be able to download those later and access it for your perusal at your leisure. Now, what else would I want to say real quick? Fam, I'm continually blown away by the level of support many of you have shown me. There is a multitude of different ways to do it, of course. I prefer that you go ahead and become a patron of mine. Click the link to my Patreon. I'm asking you to put 5 on it. But if you can't do that, it's all right. There's no shame in here. There's Cash App, PayPal, whatever. Support my work. Support me like I support you. It's definitely appreciated and definitely necessary, right? Darker Vision said the stream on my phone starts a lot sooner than on the PC. Isn't that strange? Yeah, I've noticed a little bit of a delay when I'm streaming stuff on the PC too as well. Interesting. So at any rate, fam, as per usual, if you're here and you're new to the broadcast, welcome. We'd love to have you be a member of the Black Sheep herd, right? One of the rules we have is you don't have to participate in the chat. Always point in the wrong direction. But if you're here, let us know you're here. Pop your name in the chat so we can show you some love and shout you out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do that. Darker Visions is in the house. Double C is in the house. 8R7B1's in the house. Hey, Alexis is in the house. Golden Dinar, respect, fam. John Anderson is in the house. Peace and blessings to you as well. Black man, what it do? Sister Mingo's in the house. And I always butcher this one. NLR forever. B1 to you as well. What up, Monty? I see you, fam. Welcome to the broadcast and happy hump day to all of you. Sister Monty's in the house. Hey, sis. Welcome to the broadcast and happy hump day. So, family, today's topic, right? We are going to talk about cults. By the way, shout out to the beloved sister, Miss Kawami. Happy hump day to you, sister, and welcome to the broadcast. The reason why I want to talk about this subject today, fam, as well as it's been good talking to all of you via Twitter. I'm so glad for all my new Twitter followers, and I'm glad y'all starting to make y'all's way over here so you can see your brother's face, hear your brother's voice. So I'm appreciating all of my Twitter people. If you're not following me on Twitter, links in the description. Feel for that too. I drop a lot of information and follow a lot of good folk, fam. Sister Adrian's in the house, brother Kenneth's in the house. What it do? Welcome to the broadcast. The reason why we're going to talk about cults today, fam, is because if you guys are all aware of the recent kerfluffle that's kind of been going around, there's been a lot of accusations thrown out there. Accusations over who's an agent, who's not. By the way, shout out to Sister Alma, shalom to Sister August. Welcome to the broadcast and happy hump day to both of you. There's been a lot of accusations, a lot of terms, a lot of just shit thrown out there, fam. And the interesting thing about it is, good evening to you as well, JJ. Welcome to the broadcast. The interesting thing about it is that everybody's throwing around all these terms as if we all are clear as to what they're referring to, right? As to what these terms mean. You understand? They're throwing out terms like agents of chaos, cults, this, that, and the third, right? If you are a member of the Black Sheep herd, one of the things that we learn over here is that words have meaning. They have definitions. They have value. And so when you see all these terms being thrown about, fam, it behooves you to examine, first of all, what is meant by what these terms are referring to. And on top of that, we all need to be clear. Okay, we all need to be clear so that when these terms are said, there's no assumptions made, only clarity. This way we know where the confusion lies, right? Because wherever you find the confusion, wherever you find ego, who do we find? You know what I'm saying, right? So, by the way, Tab Liquor and True Era, welcome to the broadcast. We are going to talk today about cults. Now, many of you are familiar with the fact that many of our ADOS brothers and sisters have been accused of being members of a cult or cult-like organization, okay? So we need to understand, fam, exactly what are cults. What does it mean to be a cult? What does it mean to be a part of a cult? What typologies, what methodologies, what things are we likely to see when we're in the presence of cults or cult-like groups, right? So without further ado, fam, we're going to do something we haven't done in a minute. We're going to the teaching screen. The title of the broadcast today, fam, was Don't Get Bitten. And it was based off of the title of a systematic way of examining cults, right? Based off of a model called the B.I.T model. Now, B.I.T is an acronym that stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotion, right? Whenever you're in the presence of a cult, right? Whenever you're in cahoots or entwined in a cult or cult-like group, these four things are likely to be the areas of focus that the cult tends to focus upon, right? With the eye to control these things, right? So when you're in the presence of a cult will try to control your behavior. They will try to control the flow of information either toward you or away from you. They will try to control your thoughts, right? They'll try to control your emotional expressions. So what we're going to do, fam, is we're going to go through this model. Now, before we do this, I want you to understand something. This model is simply an attempt to systematize a framework of understanding cults and cult-like behavior, okay? There are other methods, other means by which to do it. But I would encourage you after this broadcast, fam, to actually go into and look at this with an objective eye. So this way, when someone is alleging that you or someone else is a member of a cult, you have a basis to be able to analyze whether that's a sound statement or not. By the way, shout out to Sister Toolbox. Be safe out there, sister. So let's go right into it. The first area that a cult will tend to practice control over is the B area, behavior, right? A cult or a cult-like group wants to regulate how you do things, okay? They want to restrict how you live, what you're doing, what you eat, what type of clothes you wear. They have various methodologies by which they do this, right? You could actually be in the presence of a cult, right? So in other words, let's say you have a common or communal living arrangement, right? They can watch you directly and attempt to regulate or control your physical activity that way, right? They can also use various other means that tie more into emotional manipulation, right? Like, guilt tripping you and things like that, right? But one of the things that you can always be certain about is that any cult or cult-like groups first go to is to try to control what it is that you do. They thrive, fam, on having everyone kind of march in lockstep, if that makes any sense, right? Cults don't really deal well with deviation. If you say that I want to do things this way or I want to do things that way, cults don't really rock like that. You see what I'm saying? Like, here's a prime example of what I'm talking about, right? When you look at certain types of spiritual practices or religious groups, one of the first things they'll do is tell you the ground rules on what behaviors you need to do, right? Now, most of these things are benign, right? Some could even argue that some of these things may even be beneficial, right? But it stands to reason that even in the case of alleged benign behaviors, a court will go the extra mile in attempting to regulate that behavior. It goes from suggesting that these are good things to do to essentially demanding that you do them with penalties in place for deviation of your behavior, right? And the control of your behavior is designed to discourage you from acting in an individual way, right? To kind of force you into obedience and to be dependent upon the group to dictate what it is that you do and how you operate. One of the interesting things about people who are members of a cult or a cult like group family is that you will notice that these people, when asked to do something, right? Let's say you ask them, you say, hey, you should do blase skibbity, right? It's funny how oftentimes they have to say, well, that sounds fine, but I need to consult the sage or the book, or they get to a point where they cannot make decisions about individual behavior on their own, and that, family, is by design, right? Because behavioral control essentially sets the foundation for all of the other methods of control that a cult is likely to engage in. Think about this. If a cult is able to get you to volunteer to control your behavior, right? To willfully choose or volunteer to act in certain ways, dress in certain ways, think in certain ways, what else can they get you to do? You feel me? Right? Like when you make a mistake and you're sitting there worried about, oh my God, if this person, who's leading the group or whatever finds out about your mistake, and you're afraid of opprobrium, you're afraid that you're going to be outcast or whatever the case may be, that could be a sign that you're in the presence of a cult. By the way, let me shout out to people that just came in. Brother Michael's in the house. Good evening, fam. You asked, is there a fine line between message discipline and organization or using language like cult? That's a good question. I think that there is definitely a clear line between people who are speaking on the topic using the same talking points, right? Because think about it. If you're a group that's organized around a specific affinity, it makes sense that when everybody who's a member of that group is asked certain questions or certain statements, that they speak with roughly the same voice, right? That they speak roughly the same way. However, I think that a cult goes beyond that, Brother Michael. In other words, you're likely to hear people not expound upon ideas in their own fashion within a cult. What they will tend to do is parrot. They will say, well, the book says so and so, or, scholars such and such says so and so, right? They won't tend to expound on things and build upon them using their own individual thought process and will. So I hope that makes clear, fam, what it is that I'm referring to, right? Agent Smith's in the house, producers in the house, and Alicia's in the house. Welcome to the broadcast, fam. So let's go to the second part of the B.I.T model here, right? Information control. Thank you, Michael. I was hoping that you understood exactly where I was coming from on that, right? Information control. Now, once you're kind of in the clutches of a cult or a cult-like group, it is imperative upon them that now that they're the ones who have kind of gotten your permission to shape how you see the world, right? They're already controlling your behavior, who you hang around with, what you eat, how you dress, etc., right? They need to also protect against the possibility of any type of dissenting information coming either at you from the outside, right? So in other words, people that are seeing the cult and given dissenting information or conflicting information, but also minimizing the amount of internal dissension as well, right? So cults will tend to use various information control methodologies, right? First of all, they'll just flat out lie, right? You'll find very often the ideas that are expounded by cults tend to focus on the creation of various groups that are usually placed at juxtaposition to the cult itself, right? Like the unbelievers, or the apostates, the hypocrites, right? Um, you know, um, the mentally dead, right? They'll use these different titles and names to create an us versus them dynamic that allows them to then be able to frame information as it comes into the group. So whereas you would have somebody external to the cult saying this is this and this is this, they're able to dismiss that information as, well, you know how those haters are, right? They're the hypocrites. They just don't understand how we roll, right? They don't have the information like we have it. You see what I'm saying? They'll use deception. They will lie. Cults will lie, right? Because remember, fam, the end goal of a cult is simply the maintenance of the cult itself. Truth and lies really are just the Play-Doh, if you will, right? The clay that a cult tends to play around with, right? They'll try to tell you stuff like, you know what? You shouldn't even be listening to them folk to begin with. What makes you think they was going to ever say anything that was going to be to our benefit? Right? Now, I see some of you in the chat making references to hashtag ADOS. I am not going to do that. What I am going to say is simply that we need to understand how groups operate so that we can make the determinations for ourselves whether or not we feel that we're in the presence of a particular type of group, whether it's an affinity group, right, or any other type of group, or if there's actual cult-like tendencies or cultish behavior, right? Because people have made these accusations, right? But we don't have a basis of understanding what these accusations even mean. In the list here, you see that this type of control minimizes and discourages access to non-cult sources of information. You'll hear people say, well, that's just the white man's science, right? How many times have you heard somebody talk about something scientific, right? Especially if it has to do with maybe psychology or anthropology or sociology, only to have it dismissed by somebody say, well, you just believe everything the white man say, right? Discouraging you from looking at other sources of information. There's also the activity of encouraging other members of the group to analyze the behaviors and the actions and so on and so forth, the sayings, the whatever of the other members of the group. What I find interesting about cults is that you'll have more people looking at the people inside the group than you'll have actually looking outside, right? Most times cults depend on the leadership to tell them what outside information is bad, what outside individuals are persona non grata, and so on and so forth. All of the rest of the effort is internalized to encourage people to keep everybody else in the group in check. Brother, now you sure you want to be talking about that sort of thing? Man, I don't know. You sound a little sus for thinking that way, right? You sure that's what you want to be on? That encouraging of the watching of the behavior and the actions and the words and the thoughts of the members of the group itself is cultish-like behavior. We also see elements within cults of compartmentalization of information, right? So in other words, the higher up you get in the organization, the more access to other information you get. When you first become a part of the organization, you just told the party line, right? But the more you show the loyalty to the cult, and to the leaders of the cult, the more you're then trusted with access to information, because by the time you've displayed so much loyalty, by the time you've practiced certain behaviors and so on and so forth, you're unlikely to question your stance, right? Cognitive dissonance won't let you. Cognitive dissonance won't let you say, wait a minute, I've been on this stuff now for X number of years, and here's this new bit of information. That new bit of information can't be true. So even if you're exposed to that new bit of information, it won't matter, right? Scientology definitely has elements such as this involved in it. You look at the auditing process and things like that, right? All of that, like the unethical use of confessions. Auditing is all about getting you to talk about your memories and talk about your experiences, but all of that is recorded. And then it's kept for the use of the leadership and for the church hierarchy in Scientology, right? For later on. So if you come and maybe you feeling like you're doubting or you have an issue with something that's said or done, they'll be like, well, you sure you want to talk about that in light of this particular circumstance that you shared with us in this auditing session? Right? August said it sounds like the Democratic Party. I couldn't agree more. Right? Think about it. Vote blue, no matter who. Right? Never mind what their positions, their strategies, their agendas, none of that. We're just told to don't think, just select the person that we select. See, fam, what I think is super interesting is the idea that everybody thinks that cults are primarily a spiritual or religious thing. When in point of fact, fam, you'll find cults in almost every area of human activity. Think about it. You got cults that dictate things around education, around politics, around sexuality, you name it. Right? Us doing this analysis today using this model will help us to understand the frameworks of many of the different groups we interact with to see whether or not we're in a place that's a healthy place, or if we're likely being wrapped up in a group that ultimately doesn't mean well for us, right? Another thing about information control, right, is gaslighting. It's trying to actually convince you that the information that you have, the facts that you have, isn't the reality of the situation. Many cults and cult-like groups will do this. They will say to you, you've experienced X, Y, and Z. This is your information, your data, right? And they'll come to you and say, nah, that didn't happen like that, fam. Wait, excuse me? This person said, blah, excuse me, woo, woo, and then they did X, Y, and Z. No, you misunderstood that. You just didn't really catch what it was that they was talking about. But yes, I did. I have a brain. I can think. Like, I know this was what. No. You right? The whole gaslighting thing. See, John Anderson hit it on the head. Once they have your consent, right? Once you've delegated your autonomy to the group, they pretty much got you. It is very rare that someone then who is involved in a group like that can ever find a way out of it. Let's go to the third thing here that we want to talk about today. And don't worry, fam, I'm going to open up the lines. You already know how it is. You're going to get a chance to call in and discuss this for yourselves. We can have a conversation. All right? This is what it's all about. The third element of control that cults like to exercise control over is your thoughts, right? So there are certain understandings, certain dogmas, teachings, doctrines, etc., that in order to be a part of certain groups, especially cults, you have to accept. You cannot even question it. You cannot question it, right? The moment you say, well, wait a minute, are you sure that's like the thing? Like, because no. See, one of the first things that is required thought control wise is for you to understand that truth can only exist within the group itself. Thank you, Mel. I appreciate it. That's first and foremost the primary thought that needs to exist in your head when you're engaged with a group that operates as a cult or cult like or practices cult like behavior, is that everything becomes black and white. Everything is dichotomies. No matter how many options you actually have available to you, any cult or cult like group will reduce all of your thoughts down to two. You either are with us or you're with the terrorist. Right? Like Shrub used to say. The creation of these false dichotomies, taking a world full of ideas and options and understandings and reducing them down usually to only two. By the way, shalom to my brother Tazabah. Welcome to the broadcast, fam. Unsunken One, welcome to the broadcast as well. Another thing that cults tend to do to control your thoughts, and we talked about this earlier on in the broadcast when I was responding to Brother Michael, was they'll have you referring to these cliche statements, right? Sister Jones in the house, welcome. Right? These buzzwords and buzz terms, these parroting statements, right? Now, don't get me wrong, every group's got their slogans and things like that. You feel me? But this goes beyond all of that. What you hear from people who operate in groups in a cult-like fashion is the consistency across the board of people from various backgrounds, various educational levels, various, you name it. They will all tend to say very many of the same exact things, the exact same statements. Another thing that they will tend to do is they will encourage you to not really analyze stuff, okay? And I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. Many cults have no problem with you taking the doctrinal statements or the dogmas of the cult and playing around with it in your head as long as you want, right? Meaning that whatever questions you ask, as long as the questions are still within the bounds of what is acceptable teachings, ideas, understandings, etc. of the group, you can elaborate on that stuff all day long. That's never an issue. But they never really want you to start looking at every idea with a critical eye. Do you understand where I'm coming from, fam? It's like you start saying, okay, I'm not going to accept this at face value. What do you mean by this? Right? When you start critically thinking, when you say, okay, I know how I feel about this thing, but scratch how I feel about it, right? What is it? When you start analyzing it rationally, and worst of all, when you say, I've been considering or pondering on what you taught me, and I've got a lightweight issue with, this being said or that being said. Constructive criticism is a no-go. You can't criticize, because remember, the truth is over here and everybody else is deluded. They're outcasts, deserving of being cast out into the outer darkness. They're throwaways, left behinds, rejects. The truth exists here. We've got the information. We understand what's happening. And everybody else is on the outside looking in. They don't get it. So if you start then critiquing using rational analysis and critical thinking, if you start critiquing, that's going to be discouraged at every turn. Because what it really is all about at the end of the day, fam, for a cult or a cult-like group is the installation of a new map in your head space, a new map of reality, if you will, right? You follow me, right? That's really, truly the end goal. Because then that assures the perpetual ongoing growth of the group, right? When you have that map, that new data map, that new programming in your head, they don't have to do anything else to ensure your compliance. They don't have to do anything else to ensure your contribution of labor, time, resources, efforts, and so on and so forth. Once that new map of reality is locked in, everything else just follows apace. So the last thing that we're going to look at, fam, is we're going to look at emotional control. Unsunken One said it right. At that point, you're on autopilot. They can point you wherever they want to point you and know that you're going to go there. Now, emotional control is very contentious because, unfortunately, the emotional ties that cause us to bind together in commonwealth, common action, right, in community in the first place, is one of the areas in which we're most weak to being manipulated by cult leaders and so on and so forth, right? As a matter of fact, fam, I would argue that next to behavioral control, emotional control exercised by a group, a cult, is probably the most dangerous and painful thing, right? That ultimately comes from all of this. Because if you think about it, fam, we are social creatures. And a lot of those social ties that we make are driven by our feelings about various things, right? So when you are told that your feelings have led you astray, in the case of you maybe caring about or respecting or loving someone outside of the group, when you're told that you're a traitor to the group because you have feelings a certain way, it's particularly insidious. When you're told that you either choose us or you've chosen them, I can't think of anything that is more psychologically damaging than that. As many of you know, in this whole recent thing that we all see go on, a lot of people were saying, well, if you ride with that group, then you're not with this group, right? That you're not one of us. And people were accused and shamed by using terms like fence sitter, jock rider. I'm trying to be nice, right? And so on and so forth, right? Let's look at emotional control, fam. Emotional control operates in a really weird way, right? Because on one hand, cults do not want you to be emotionless. But what they want to make sure to do is control the expressions of your emotions, right? So they want you to express emotion. They want your fire. They want your passion. They want your joy. They want your ire, your outrage. But they only want it where they want it to be directed to. and nowhere else, right? And so when you deviate emotionally from the control of the group, they use things like questioning your identity. They tell you that you just don't understand the history of our group and why we do what we do. How could you? You know, they always try to have you afraid, family, afraid of so many different things, afraid of outsiders, afraid of enemies, afraid of agents, afraid of this, afraid of that, afraid of this idea, afraid of that one. You don't ask questions. They want you afraid of the group looking at you and saying, ugh, look at them. I can't even believe we ever thought they was with us to begin with. That social disapproval. Fam, there is nothing I think that is worse to a human being than to be a part of a group and to have the disapproval, the opprobrium of the group one has been a part of. Don't believe me? There's a religious group here in America, the Amish. The Amish are nonviolent, well, for the most part, right? Nonviolent folk. But if you are a member of the group and you violate in their mind the teachings, you deviate, they practice shunning on you. You get no aid, no assistance. They won't talk to you. They won't look at you. Think about this, fam. Many of these people have been raised with these people. They have gone to the same churches. They've helped barn raisins. They've helped birth calves and so on and so forth, right? We know that the threat, even the threat of social opprobrium is a powerful tool for the manipulation and the changing of behavior. Now, this does not mean that there should not be social sanctions for the violation of social mores. We're not talking about that. Because remember, cults take our normal inclinations and they ramp them up over 1,000. So it's not that you just, violating a social more and you need to be told or brought down a peg or two. No, you're unsavable. You're irredeemable. You're beyond the pale. You are done, finished, fiend. They always want you to be afraid. And here's the thing too. Many cults and cult-like groups only want your good feelings, right? The joy, the peace, the happiness, the love that you feel to only be associated with them, to only come from them. There's a technique that people who are familiar with cults understand called love bombing, right? And the technique is pretty much this. You take somebody, usually somebody that's alienated from a group already, right? Somebody who's by themselves, not really a bad person. They're just not operating with a group, don't really have anything that they doing with somebody else. And what you do is you introduce them to your group. And when they come to meet your group members, everybody love them. Everybody's got hugs, kisses, food, blase skippy. I mean, when this person shows up on the scene, they describe it as like, I'm coming home. I found my family. They get love bombed, fam. They get the best seat in the house, the choicest cut at the dinner table, right? They get all the glowing terms that people can describe them as, directed as them. And they're told that they can have this all the time if they're just a part of this group. That the love, the care, the concern, the warmth, the generosity, the acceptance that they feel is theirs anytime, 24/7, as long as they're a part of this group. And there you have it, fam. They feed these people emotional highs, right? So that just like a junkie, when they crash and they experience emotional lows, they turn back to the group for new emotional highs. But just like a drug addiction, it's never, ever as good as the first time. And many times we find ourselves wrapped up in groups, simply chasing the high that it was when we first signed up, when we first signed on, when we first joined up. Because, fam, ultimately, love bombing has to give way to reality. The reality is that sometimes your breath smells and somebody's gonna tell you. Sometimes it's time to do the work and we ain't got time to party. It can't just be a love fest 24/7. A mutual admiration society where the emotional joys and the dopamine is just flowing higher and higher and faster and faster. No, at some point, reality intrudes. So it's never going to be as good as that first time, that first introduction to the group. But how many of us, fam, how many of us have been involved with groups, with organizations that have continually kept us chasing an emotional high we've never seen since the beginning? Fear and love are the only two emotions ultimately that a cult wants you to address, to deal with. It's as simple as that. Just as in thought control, they use false dichotomies to reduce down your options, your range of thoughts, your range of options to only two. Emotional control ultimately breaks down to only two emotions: love and fear. Fear for everyone else and everything else, love for the group. I'm going to post again the link to the resource there in the chat. Now, fam, I will readily admit, do I think the B.I.T model is perfect? Probably not. Do I think, though, that it, among others, provides us with the framework to be able to truly determine whether or not we're actually a part of a cult or not? I think so. Does it give us a basis of being able to decide for ourselves whether or not we're in the presence of cult-like groups, cultish figures, and so on and so forth? See, fam, the thing is that a pejorative is usually only a pejorative when it's no truth behind it, right? If I call you a dumbass, but you're not dumb, then I'm being pejorative. But if you are a dumbass, right, and you know you are, well, then I've just simply told the truth. If you're engaged with any group, any organization, right, that exhibits these traits, it would behoove you to ask questions to determine whether or not you're actually a part of a group that's just very passionate about its affinities, or if you're a part of a cult. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're a member of a cult. I don't have no accusations to point at hashtag ADOS or FBA or anybody else. This broadcast today, fam, was to do what I always set out to do, is to trust enough in you and I to give us the information to be able to make these determinations for ourselves. Short but sweet one today, fam. 425-296-1980. Let me shout out people in the chat here. Sister Tiffany in the house, welcome. Happy Hump Day to you. John Petty's in the house. Welcome to the broadcast. Let me see who else. Easy, I see you, fam. Welcome to the broadcast. Let me go over some of you. August was talking about PETA. Yeah. PETA has cult-like elements to it. I wouldn't doubt it at all. As a matter of fact, when I was a vegan, part of it was because of different videos and things like that I saw from PETA. I was an ethical vegan. I didn't eat meat because I deplored what was being done to animals. I still deplore what's being done to animals, but I'm also realistic. We need to eat meat. Some of us do anyway, right? But yeah, 425-296-1980, fam, is the number. Do you have any groups that you have been a part of? It don't matter what they are, right? We want to hear your experience. Share with us if we've been able to elucidate for you today whether or not you've been actually experienced or a member of a particular group that operates in this way. You're welcome, Golden Dinar. I mean, I recognize that this video probably won't get a lot of play, and that's all right. I don't do it for the popularity. I do it to provide the information. Alma said people better think for themselves. You know, Alma, here's the thing. I actually do every broadcast keeping in mind that I believe that you can think for yourselves. As a matter of fact, I demand it. If you're a member of the Angry Black Sheep, I demand that you think for yourself. And I intend always to give you the tools to be able to do so. Cults of personalities. Darker Visions talked about cults of personalities. Think about it. Darker Visions, cults of personalities. All that is basically a cult organized around an individual. Sister Sherry's in the house. Welcome to the broadcast. You didn't miss anything, Sister Sherry. We talked about the B.I.T model and how it relates. The B.I.T model is a model that discusses cults and cult-like behaviors. Michael West says, heck, seems like America is the biggest cult. Michael, you know what's interesting? That since I've been studying cult behavior, right? You know, how cults operate, I can see elements of cults everywhere you look, right? This isn't meant for you to be targeted at specific individuals or specific groups per se. This is to teach you that these manipulative tactics, right? These organizational moves that are designed to perpetuate the organizations and nothing more are at play in many areas of your life. And rather than people throwing around accusations without understanding what those terms mean, we examine them and we see whether or not there is validity. Todd said, this is precisely why I have an issue being a part of any religion as a deist. No offense to Christianity or anyone who follows religion, but it seems like even to question is a sin. There's elements of that in religious thought and practice, Taj. There's no need to apologize for that. That's facts. If people have issues with that, then they need to bring up their issues with that and address that. Tiffany said, Brother Mark, I posted on Twitter about cults of personalities. I see cult-like behavior everywhere as well. It's easy to spot once you know what you're looking for. Easy Be Easy said the military is cult-like. Yes, they build cults of personality around different units like the Rangers and Special Forces and Navy SEALs, Force Recon, things like that. Hell, when I was in boot, I was going to commo. I was going to Signal Corps school. I wasn't going to be an airborne ranger or anything like that. Yet when I'm marching in cadence, I'm singing airborne ranger cadence songs. Yep, there's cults everywhere you look. See, fam, what I didn't tell you was that while cults can use negative things to operate, what we fail to understand is that the word cult itself is not necessarily a pejorative. As stated, there are certain aspects to every organization that if you look can be pinpointed as cult-like. right? Brother Michael asked a really good question right at the beginning of the broadcast. Is there a fine line between message discipline, right? Making sure we're all on the same page and operating like a cult? Yeah, there's a damn fine line. There's a distinction, but the line is fine. What I've often found is the delineating factor, right? The differentiation, the delineating factor between operating as a cult and operating as an affinity group or something like that, right? Is that an affinity group has an end goal in mind and consistently can be seen to work toward that end goal. But a cult only has the goal of maintenance, sustenance, and perpetual growth of the group itself. See, I'm going to be upfront with you. There are people that said that ADOS operates like a cult. I think that such an appellation is premature. If ADOS was operating as a cult, we wouldn't see ADOS operating at least ostensibly towards an end goal, right? I would imagine that once our justice claim is honored, the payment of the debt that's due is paid, that there would be no more need for hashtag ADOS the group, and they would just simply move on to other things. But now, if it's only about the maintenance, the perpetual growth of the group itself, regardless of any aim that they're publicly stating, why then we could start to examine with critical eyes the possibility of hashtag ADOS as being a cult. I think that that appellation as applied to them is a falsehood. It's premature and it's false. And that's not me taking a side. That's just me acknowledging the truth of the matter. Right? Come on, fam. Y'all talking in the chat. Talk to us on the phone. 425-296-1980. Y'all know what time it is. There are people who lead groups who try and operate like cult leaders. Now, fam, I'm not going to sit here and say that people that may have criticisms of Yvette and Tone's criticisms aren't valid. I would have to see the specific critiques or whatever to be able to make a determination. And even then, I'm going to be critical because I need to see certain information for myself. But that being said, people can try to operate like a thing is a cult, like the individual leaders or the main proponents of a thing can try and operate like it's a cult. Does that mean that the people that adhere to some of the teachings or philosophies or whatever operate as a cult? Not necessarily. Not necessarily at all. What about B1? What about it? Easy, do you have a specific question? You know how we do. What are you asking? August said Trumpers behave cult-like. I can see that. I would definitely argue that there's a cult of personality around our current president. And I would argue that he set it up that way. So, yeah, I think that's an argument that few people would be willing to oppose, really. Here we go, finally. Caller from 407, it's your man Mark Black. What's your name, where you calling from, and what's on your mind?
Michael West over here in Las Vegas.
What's good, brother Black? Michael? Talk to us, fam.
Interesting conversation.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm doing as you asked, and I'm a bit involved on the periphery of a couple of cults. One is Scientology, and I escaped that one, but my family has roots in Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, and, okay, yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, fam. Talk to us a little bit about your experience.
Well, it just the B.I.T model just pretty much just sets it all up. And when I talk about it, I just rearrange the letters in what I think is a proper order. And so I would put it like I comes first, the control of information.
Mm-hmm.
Any or any group or organization that you get in with, and they first start to tell you, we only ones who got the truth and don't listen to anybody else. There are no facts. Everybody's trying to get us. Everybody's getting fake news. Like somebody just mentioned the Trump campaign, in that leadership thing where they control the information. Nobody has the truth but them. Believe only, me kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing is that they can control your thoughts. They can control your information. Then they control your thoughts, and they get you to think one way, and you fall into that system of cognitive dissonance where you don't believe fat meat is greasy.
Facts.
Don't believe your long eyes, and you think that way. I think actually, to me, white supremacy falls into this thing as well.
Elaborate.
Because they do the same thing, right?
Elaborate.
And well, the if they can control the information, like dumb you down in school, and by repeating the same lie over and over and over again, to just becomes accepted and normalized. And then even though that stuff can be debunked, if you indoctrinated, if you've been listening to the lie a long time, you won't believe any contrary information. And they put it on this front with information that controls your thought that they can't lie, that they're beyond reproach. And they did a lot of this in Scientology. And what they did is they set it up like a front. And they present an image of being helpful and above reproach, and they can help you solve your problem. They can make your life better and all this other kind of thing. And then when you get deep into it, and then they start telling you all this wacky stuff about aliens trapped in volcanoes that are now trapped in your body, and they're making you do bad things. And but by then, most people exposed to it will be in too deep. And it doesn't matter how smart you are or how much money you get or have. Matter of fact, Scientology is mostly rich folks.
Agreed. Dave, as a matter of fact, if you read, I don't know if you read the work Going Clear, I did. What I found interesting was the commitment of the church to go after influential individuals such as Tom Cruise, the chick that used to play on the what's her name, Leah Remini, and others, right? To specifically go after them.
Yeah, they did. And then I think, a lot of times you stay because there's great penalty to leave. They're going to slander you. They're going to steal all your money. All this other kind of stuff. You're going to be banished. Your friends and your family's not going to talk to you. Just like the Jehovah's Witnesses too. They both claim.
What I thought was interesting too, fam, was that if you remember correctly, if you look at the history of Scientology, right, L. Ron Hubbard, right, created sort of a cult of personality around himself. But then at the death of L. Ron Hubbard and the takeover of the organization by David Miscavige, he actually found a way to create the organization itself as the cult. So it was funny how it moved from being a cult of personality to just being a generalized cult. If you know what I'm talking about, fam.
I did see that happen. And he followed the same thing that the religious folks do. Most of the cults that are out here, say religious cults, they're actually pretty old. They started back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And in the 1800s, they had that charismatic leader. And then, when the leader died, some replaced him with another leader, but most went into the organization being the leader.
Right. Right, you saw that
So that's
with the Watchtower Society, right? The Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower Society. It started initially
yep,
kind of as a publishing house, right, led by a certain group of individuals. But then when those
right,
individuals went on, you still have the same kind of hierarchy, but it a lot of the power to control the behavior of the individual members of the group has been devolved down into the individual kingdom halls and things like that.
yep, absolutely. And then after everything that they taught has been debunked or failed, because they must have had, because I would go in and out of it trying to study and become a Jehovah Witness.
Mm-hmm.
And they made, like 6 or 7 predictions about the end of the world.
Yeah.
And they had everybody like sell all their belongings and not go to school, not have children, not even get married. And, they ruined a whole lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
But, a core group of them stayed in there regardless. They just kept staying in there. So, after they, I guess a normal cult, this is where a lot of people get confused, and it even confused me as well, reading Freedom of Mind, is that the control of the environment. And so the older cults, you would be on a compound or whisk away somewhere like
Yep.
Jim Jones. But the new cults, it appears that you have freedom to go and come and go as you please, but you actually don't.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's like a prison with invisible walls. So you really can't leave. And another thing that controls your environment is how much time you have to donate or contribute to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're going to be like a Jehovah Witness, you're going to be involved, 3-4 days a week for hours.
Yeah.
Do work, whether you're going out there or handing out leaflets or watchtowers or awake magazines or having Bible studies or, then having just a regular service. And it was plenty of this,
Mm-hmm.
You probably, spend 3-4 days a week doing that kind of stuff. And the same thing can be like a pyramid scheme. If you got to spend 40 hours a week for your side gig, you got a problem. So that all controls your environment. And both groups said that you only can get your information from, like, say, the Watchtower.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else's information was corrupt. You had to use the Watchtower Jehovah Witness Bible. You had to read their publications, and you couldn't like say, okay, I want to go visit with my aunt and go to a Baptist church. Oh no, they kick you out for that. You know what I mean? So that restriction of independent thought, that you can't double check anything or do your own research. I'm thinking if you got the right answer, I don't care what research you do is going to lead you back to me.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
they don't.
You see, fam, I want to touch on what you just said, because I think that if nothing else, that one idea right there helps to go a long way towards preventing people from being trapped within various organizations. Critical thinking allows you to be able to determine if what you think or what you believe or what you accept is true is actually true. And if it is actually true, it's not threatened in any way by critical thinking, by rational analysis, by critique. As a matter of fact, those things, for things that are truthful or factual, tends to strengthen those things, right? Instead of diminishing them and eroding them and wiping those ideas and thoughts and things like that away, the information that you discover tends to buttress those things.
Absolutely. And I think that is the delineation factor one. And then the second one would be if the group is legit, they playing a good game, they will allow you to leave without punishment. They allow you to leave without shame.
Yeah.
So it's like you do, and you probably say this almost in every podcast you do, is that if you don't believe me, go look it up yourself. Or if
Oh,
you
most
said,
definitely. Look,
you don't want to listen to me, go listen to somebody else.
yeah,
But
I have
those
no
groups,
problem with that, fam. I actually encourage people to dispute with me. Like, if you think I'm wrong, fam, I need to hear it. Because if we have a true and honest and genuine dispute, right, and we're both honest actors, right, we're the only agenda is us getting to the truth of the matter, right? When we have our discussion, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to be established to have the truth of the matter, and I'm going to be thinking what you think when we're done, right? Or it's going to be
right?
established that what I'm standing on is solid, and you need to be, rolling the way I'm rolling. It can only be one of two ways, right? And so either way, I win, right? If the person is able to establish that I'm clearly in the wrong, right, through clear change of evidence, through proper analysis, through critical thinking and critique, then it's to my benefit to accept where they coming from, right? But if they haven't,
Yeah.
then I'm encouraged to continue to either adhere to where I'm at or continue to search for a clearer, better answer. Either way, I win, right? I can't lose in that exchange, and neither does the other person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it's like. And you compare that, like I said, it's disappointing for me to see like some of our ADOS and FDA people going at it and whatever it is. And this to me is like, we already know one of the greatest tools in culture is divide and conquer.
Yep.
And at every chance we get, we just fall for the okie doke and go with the divide and conquer.
But
And,
here's one thing to
you
note,
know,
fam, if I may, right? I want us to
mm,
get away from an idea that unfortunately has gotten really, really entrenched among our people. And that idea is this: unity does not require unanimity, right? In other words, we don't all have to agree on everything in order to work towards a common goal, right? Like, for example, there are people out there who have different religious practices, different lifestyles, different understandings and ways of seeing the world, right? So then we have
right.
this idea that comes that says, okay, in spite of all those other things, we can coalesce around this one idea, right? The idea of our lineage, okay? This does not
Mm-hmm.
mean that all those other differences aren't there, right? This doesn't mean that, okay, now I've cleaved to our lineage, right? And I'm supporting and backing things that benefit and uphold our lineage as a collective. That doesn't mean you now then have to dress this way, talk this way, think this way, act this way, right? Unity does not
Mm.
require unanimity.
I couldn't have said it better. You sound like Malcolm X because he said the same thing. And it is an example of, to me, of like say Charlottesville, where the protester got run over and killed. That whole shenanigans.
Yes,
That was not one ideology group. There were different facets of white supremacy, whether it be
absolutely.
Nazis or the alt-rights or the Proud Boys. Some want separation. Some want to kick you out of the country, black people out of the country. Somebody want to kill all the black people in the country.
Facts.
I mean, they all put all that aside and they got together for one big meeting. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
And
That's
just,
exactly
and
that's
I think
exactly what I was talking about. You look, Charlottesville was a perfect example. You had white separatists, you had nationalists, you had white supremacist warriors, you had neo Nazis, you had fascists, you had alt right, you had all of those people, but they were able to coalesce and organize around one idea. Even after Charlottesville, you saw evidence of infighting between them, right? You saw Richard Spencer getting dissed by this one, and this one being dismissed by that one. But for that moment in time, in order to assert themselves for their collective interest, they said, damn, being having unanimous thought, let's unify anyway. And that's really where it all
Absolutely.
comes down to.
Yeah. And, right now we got all these different groups. We all divided, and we really all really want the same goal. The bottom line goal is we want to be recompensed for what America has done for us. I
Yeah.
don't care whether you're the Moors or you one of these people saying that you're a Native American or one of these people saying that you're a Hebrew Israelite or ADOS or B1 or FBA. We all want the same thing. We want to be compensated. We want the system to change. We want to be free American citizens
Exactly.
and
We're
and
tired of
partake.
being the bottom caste and we want the fullest expression of Americanness. We're the only ones that's ever believed in it, really, anyway. Right. So the
Right.
fact that we might all have different modes of operation does not preclude us having the capability to be able to unify around that one idea, coalescing around that one idea, bound together by the common tie that we all share, which is lineage.
It's going to be that way. We're going to wake up and we're going to stop all this nonsense and we're going to realize we're all fighting for the same thing, even if it's in a different mode,
Hey, from your
a
lips
different
to the
strategy,
God's
different
ears,
tactic.
man.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to have to happen,
I
you
agree.
know.
It's going to have to
But
happen.
I've been watching, I haven't been participating on any panels for ADOS or B1 or FBA or Tariq or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do watch them and I can see the participation and the views and the members are falling like a rock.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be involved with this nonsense no more.
Because it's
It's like,
absolute patent nonsense. I mean, the point of fact is that um, at some point, either we are going to cleave to the lineage and do the work required to gain specific redress for our grievances as members of that lineage, or we won't, right? And to the extent that we do not, we continue to maintain the status quo. We all sit here and talk about we want change, right? But that change
yeah,
is going to come through us making active efforts, whether it's this mode of politics or that one, whether it's through cultural analysis and questioning and critique or this one, right? It does, in my opinion, it ultimately doesn't really matter where on this train you get on, as long as you get on this train, because this train is headed in the direction we're all claiming we want to go.
absolutely. I couldn't have said it better.
Fam, I really want to thank you, man, for you sharing your experiences with us, giving us some insight, from the more religious perspective of some of the way that these groups operate. And I definitely want to encourage you, man, to stick around. Be with us, be with the black sheep, man. We need these types of discussions. We need this type of analysis so that we can see our way clear. We don't need nobody to tell us what to think. What we need is the mechanisms that give us the capability to know how to think. And I thank you for being a part of that and contributing to that effort.
All right. Thank you too. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Peace to you. Great call, fam. Great call. See, the brother broke it down. You can, if you look hard enough, fam, you can see elements of what we've discussed today in a lot of different areas in which you operate. And we have the responsibility to ask ourselves some key questions whenever we're engaging with various groups. Because, fam, all things that are shiny aren't gold, right? All money ain't good money. We've got these sayings, right? These sayings in our community that tell us to exercise our critical thinking capabilities, to be mindful and to be watchful, right? But rarely do we actually take these adages to heart, right? We rarely take these adages to heart, right? Our ADOS brothers and sisters say that they're the ones that are pushing the needle, that are doing the work. And I would say that I've seen evidence that they're doing the work. I'm not disputing the fact that they are. I have questions that I ask them, right? that I would like answers to. And I also do question the adage that no one else is doing anything outside of hashtag ADOS. There are too many people that I'm familiar with personally, as well as we as a collective are familiar with, whose work that we followed, that we've seen, that are not necessarily aligned with the political movement known as hashtag ADOS, for them to be able to say that. That's very strange verbiage and behavior to be expressing to me. 425-296-1980, fam, is the number, right? I want to hear from you where you see elements of these types of behaviors, these types of activities in the groups that you've interacted with, right? Because, fam, again, we here are all about doing the work, right? We got to put in the efforts to understand exactly how things are maneuvering, how people are operating, how groups maneuver, and how they operate. So we know how to position ourselves and put ourselves in places that are primed for our growth individually as well as collectively. Easy Be Easy said the mudslinging from the two factions is stupid. I couldn't agree more. Mudslinging to me is dumb as hell, right? It's just, I don't get down with mudslinging. There's no need for it. Information, facts, data, they stand on their own. Either they can be defended or they can't. And if they can't, then somebody needs to change up. Alexis, I actually thought about it, right? And I do have various books that I suggest to start off with in the description of every video, right? Those are some books I think give us a good basis for even understanding the discussions that we have as Black sheep. But there are books that I do recommend. Matter of fact, remember my last broadcast when we were talking about survival, I recommended 3 or more different books, right? But as far as like an actual book club where we break down, like we read and break down stuff, I suppose I could do that. I've got a few different books that I would like for us to examine. Because there's a lot of things that I feel like that we need to look at a lot more, right? We need to start looking at moral philosophy a lot more. And philosophy bores the shit out of most of us, right? But there are elements to moral philosophy, to ethics, that I think if we understood these things better, it would help us to frame a lot of the arguments we frame much differently. Because there are a lot of arguments that we make that are based around moral sentiments, around ethical principles, without understanding what the basis of morality and ethics really is, right? Brother Travis said Black empowerment is philosophy. I agree. What we use these terms, fam, but the thing is that do we really understand what is meant by Black empowerment? Who are we letting define these terms? Do we truly understand what these terms mean? Right? We use these terms and then claim that people that don't adhere to whatever we believe our understanding of them are to be off code. But when do we ever get around to actually, as a collective, defining these terms? Not just based off of some individual's understanding of them. That's a good place to start, right? When we talk about codified behavior, I think Neely Fuller's code is a good place to start. But unless we start having these discussions as a collective, how can we enforce any codified behavior, right? If the collective itself has not co-signed it. If we're not even talking about what constitutes properly codified behavior, if we're not talking about what's good moral stances and a good basis of understanding ethics, we have to be having these discussions. And unfortunately, they're not fun. They're not talking about, titties on a frog or whatever the case may be. I mean, damn, fam. A lot of the stuff that we need to do isn't going to be fun. And if we are here solely to be entertained, there's other options that you have that take way less effort that you can do. That don't have nothing to do with the black sector of this and that and the third. Like, you could just simply, watch TV or play video games or something if you're looking for entertainment. You don't have to be involved with beefs that getting people's jobs taken away from them, and names being called and mud being slung and people's addresses being exposed and this, that, and the third. When the hell did that get fun? When did that get fun, fam? Like, when did that become, class A entertainment in the social media sphere of our people? I posted up a tweet, fam, where I told the people I'm not at war with anybody of our group, of our tribe. If you have an issue with me, don't call out, call in, right? Give me a chance to have a dialogue with you. You know, don't cancel me, counsel me. Right? See, fam, we need to have a little bit more sense of humility. I can only go so far as you do. Right? If truly, if this is about collective, right? If this is about being a collective and about doing this thing together, then I truly, in a real sense, can only go as far as any of you. So if there is something that I say that may cause you to stumble, to fall, let me know. I need to know that, right? The Bible says the same thing, right? Paul taught that all things are permissible, but not everything edifies. That sometimes it's not about your own personal sins, but someone else seeing your actions and they stumble and fall away because of it, right? You may be ideologically perfect. You may have never made a mistake when it comes to this black empowerment ideology. But guess what? If your behavior, your actions are causing other people to fall away, then how effective are you really in this sphere of empowering us as a people? We need, we need to be humble. We need to come together with each other with a spirit of grace, of understanding. Shit, fam, think about this. In your own life, as a member of our lineage, is there truly an experience that any one of the other members of our lineage is having that you really can't understand, that just really makes zero sense to you? Like, is your lack of grace for us so entrenched that there is simply no way that you can find a space of empathy? Not, you don't necessarily have to have shared the exact same experience, right? I don't expect you to over identify with us. And I'm not expecting you to keep standing on the outside with this detached viewpoint, analyzing me as if you don't know me. No, I need you and I to put one foot into each other's world. I keep one foot in mine and one foot in yours so that I can have grace. I can have empathy for you. Ultimately, fam, that's what this whole thing is going to boil down to. Are we going to link up around the one tie we know we share, never demanding unanimity, right? Allowing individuals and groups to operate in the way that they operate, Walk the path that they walk, knowing that we're all walking up and down the same aisle on the same train headed in the same direction, or are we not? That's the choice all of us ultimately are brought to make, right? I don't I created an entire channel so that if you are outcast, if you're a pariah, if you're a black person that no other black person can stand, you got a home here. Because we all, fam, got something about us that if other black people look at it, be like, man, that dude, no. Right? But our unity does not require unanimity. It doesn't require unanimity of thought. It doesn't require unanimity of action, even. 42529 I'm sorry, 425-296-1980 is the number, fam. I'm down to take one more call, then I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Easy Be Easy said none of the factions accept a shred of criticism. I hear you. Because why would you accept criticism when you've got all the facts? Let's just keep it a buck. Jason Black will tell you in a minute. He knows exactly what the hell's going on and you don't. He's the black Ayatollah. And if you don't like it, it's his way or the highway. That's just truthful. That's how he operates. He ain't accepting no critiques. Matter of fact, I don't think any of these personalities that many of us follow are really open to critique, to actual examination of their stances. They'll take your arguments and straw man them and dismiss them. Logical fallacies abound. Bad faith argumentation. No, they don't. And we've even examined why they don't. Because they hold you in contempt. That's just facts. I told y'all, fam, I chose a side. I chose the side of my people. All of them. Every single one. All the rest of it be damned. I'm good. I'm not here to play piggy mudslingy. Damn all that. And trust me, I'm definitely open to be questioned. There ain't shit I say that I expect to be gospel pronouncements. Fam, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for your time as usual, right? I hope that you've had a productive hump day today, right, fam? We're almost over the hump, right? Make sure you tune in Saturday, right, for Sucker Free Saturday. We're going to talk about another good one. Links to the resource that we used during the broadcast will be in the comments on this video. I hope that this topic was able to elucidate for some of you. We hear these terms thrown around. Cult. Things like that. Understand, fam, that we are going to actually examine those things. We don't accept shit that anybody say at face value. Everything is open to analysis, critique, refinement, understanding until we got it. No more, no less. So, all my black sheep, I love you guys. All of you, I have the best herd on YouTube, and I'm continually amazed by y'all. So thank all. My thanks go out to all of you, fam. Make sure you tune in Saturday, and as usual, I'm going to leave you with the wishes for love, peace, prosperity, and power, real power to our people.